Did you know a restraining order can affect your right to own guns? Here's what you need to know. So, you've been served with a restraining order. You went to a hearing and that restraining order was granted. A lot of times that happens and people give us a call. What can I do about my gun rights? Does this affect my gun rights? Am I still allowed to possess guns? And the answer is it depends. So in Indiana, when a restraining order is granted, and whether or not the judge decides to take your gun rights away from you depends on the type of restraining order and if it is requested by the person that is asking for that restraining order. Now, say this is a restraining order for harassment. Someone files a restraining order. My ex-boyfriend sends me 7 text messages a day. Every day it's 7 text messages. I don't text him back. I want him to stop. Now, in that instance, the judge may grant the restraining order to stop this person from texting his ex-girlfriend, but at that point, there's not enough evidence to suggest there's any threats of harm. So in a case like that, the judge may grant the restraining order, but say, hey, look, there's not a threat. There's not a direct threat to her safety. There's no threats of safety. This guy's just being annoying. I'm not going to take his gun rights away from him. And that can happen even if the person that filed the restraining order asks the judge in the restraining order petition to restrict his access to firearms. It's ultimately up to the judge whether or not to restrict your access to firearms pursuant to a restraining order. Now, say this is a restraining order based on domestic violence. There's an allegation of domestic violence. My intimate partner hit me in the middle of the night and strangled me. Judge, here's the evidence. There's a hearing. Judge grants a protective order. Most of the times in cases like that, the judge is going to restrict your rights to have guns because there's an active threat of violence. And typically in cases like that too, not only is there an active restraining order, but there's probably a criminal case going on mirroring that. Because usually if there's domestic violence, the police are called, a case is filed with the state, but that person also wants their own protective order. Now, if there's a criminal case going on, there's already a no contact order. And then because there's a no contact order, you're not allowed to have firearms. So a lot of the times with these domestic cases, it's almost a guarantee that if a restraining order is granted, you're going to lose your right to firearms. It's very important for you to have an attorney on your side when you go to these protective order hearings, especially if your gun rights are important to you. Because like I said, a lot of times people will file restraining orders asking for a person's gun rights to be restricted, but the restraining order doesn't allege enough threats of violence for a judge to grant that. But if you go in there alone, not having an attorney on your side and don't know whether to speak up saying, hey judge, I don't think my gun rights should be restricted because of this, the judge may grant it because the person that asked for the restraining order asked for the gun rights to be restricted and you didn't ask for that to be denied. That's why it's always important for you to have an attorney when you go into a protective order hearing. If you're facing a restraining order, please give us at the Marc Lopez Law Firm a phone call, 317-632-3642. And always remember, plead the fifth.